To walk into Cloudland for the first time was to walk in and say, wow, this place, amazing. The dance floor held 2,500 people. My long-term experience with Cloudland started on my first visit to Brisbane. I went to visit the boss there, Ivan Damon. He was busy in the office, so I then went down to the flats, which took up a bit of space at the back of Cloudland, to hook up with some Melbourne guys in a band called the Blue Jays, which was fronted by Tony Worsley of Brisbane. And as I walked in, they were lying on their beds after a week of a lot of shows, and they were tired and everything. I think that's the reason they were still in bed. And there were flies crawling around the ceiling, and they were lying in their beds with .22 rifles shooting at the flies. The intriguing part of it for me, being an artist, was to actually walk on the stage there, because it was a stage, even as I started singing there in 1964, it was an old-time stage. Behind the curtains, there was a huge parabolic half sphere, and that was used as a sound shell to get the sound out into the audience. During the days of the 40s, 50s and 60s big band, even through the 60s and into the 70s, there was always a big band there, and I'm talking about perhaps 18, 20-piece big band. And then there was, of course, the smaller band that played a lot of the rock and roll songs called the Sounds of Seven. It was the most amazing place, and it was the birthplace of Sunshine Records, the company for which I made my first records, along with Tony Worsley and the Blue Jays, and Rusty Wiley, and a whole bunch of other huge Australian, but mostly Queensland artists. The Purple Hearts come to mind, Mike Ferber and the Bowery Boys, and of course Julian Jones and the Breed. A lot of the girls were from Brisbane were also included in these recording sessions, and it was a marvellous place for creativity and to be exposed. Every dance had 2,000 people there. Tuesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday, and even Sunday night. It was an extraordinary experience to walk on and just talk really softly on the stage and know that everybody in the entire place, as big as it was, would be able to hear you clearly. No big PA systems, just this wonderful plaster-clad parabolic dome standing on its edge, throwing the sound out to 2,500 people in the audience. But one of the greatest and saddest things was the fact that the whole area was basically sold off just for the use of a small amount of people who could afford to live on that hill in Bowen Hills. And the shame is that it should have been kept for the people as a public place, and perhaps even rebuilt the place called Cloudland. After all, I think there's probably a third of the population who were procreated in the car park.